and gentlemen, I think we have to make some noise to get our friends back from the coffee break out there. It's my pleasure, I know it's been a long day, but we are getting into the panel discussion part of this day with an exciting session and panel on one of the key tenets of the climate mobility principles, protecting rights in the face of sea level rise. This is a topic that the GCCM has been working on very actively with many of the countries represented here through the Rising Nations Initiative and the Coalition for Addressing the Existential Threats of Sea Level Rise, CSAT. And we're very pleased to, in this session, illuminate some of the challenges that countries are facing, but also some of the ongoing diplomatic efforts to address the legal and political and financial implications of sea level rise. We will kick off this session with a very short video from the Rising Nations Initiative, and then I will invite our keynote speakers to address the audience. So if I could ask, please, for the video to go on.
Ocean Sciences indicates that sea levels are rising faster than even the gloomiest forecasts predicted.
The United Nations says the world is heading in the wrong direction. 48% chance that global temperatures will rise by 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Stressing the need for dramatic cuts in greenhouse gases.
Is a litany of broken climate promises.
Repercussion for countries that don't meet the goals that they have put out this.
How likely is it that world leaders will, in fact, do something?
Our people, in my generation or the next, will be unable to exist on the islands that have nurtured our ancestors for centuries.
I wouldn't actually define myself as a climate activist or an activist. I'm just someone trying to save my home.
It is our vision that we would like to maintain and preserve this paradise, regardless of climate change and sea level rise.
We want our future descendants to look back and thank their ancestors for doing all that they can to save Tuvalu.
The existential threat we face is not our making, but it will remake us. We need a global settlement. It must recognize and protect our cultural integrity, our human and economic capital, and our sovereignty. It must be co-created and enacted with the people and the governments of island nations. Because if the international community allows an entire country to disappear from climate change, what hope will be left for anyone else?
Thank you very much. We are pleased to have two of the champions of the CSAT coalitions with us here this afternoon. And I would like to introduce our first keynote speaker and champion, His Excellency Terence Drew, the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. Excellency, please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon to all. Excellencies, colleagues, members representing NGOs, and of course, the people who are directly impacted at the community level with respect to the scourge of sea level rise. The more that I attend sessions like these, especially by GCCM, is the more optimistic I become. For a couple of reasons, but I'll just state one. I remember when I was younger, and we used to take the bus to school. And it was a private bus then. And the driver had a statement. He used to have all these quotes around his bus. And I remember reading one, and I can say from the onset, I never truly agreed with him. And I will say why. But that quote said, "The more people I meet is the more I love my dog." And I keep wondering why he said that. But today, as I've always questioned the validity of that statement, I can clearly say that the more people I meet is the more I recognize that our humanity is the same, and herein lies my optimism. St. Kitts and Nevis, we come to this panel not as a nation awaiting the future consequences of sea level rise, but as one already managing its present realities. Our coastlines are retreating, our coral reefs, the natural buffers that have protected our shores for millennia, are bleaching and dying. The storm surges that accompany each hurricane season reach further inland than they did a generation ago. And what was once described as a long-term threat is now for communities across our Twin Island Federation a current and compounding emergency. For St. Kitts and Nevis, we don't have as much land as others do, but what we lack in land, we make up for in surrounding waters. Our water space is at least 100 times greater than our land space. And thus we are an ocean state. And as such, our relationship with the sea as a small island state and a large ocean state is intrinsically more intimate, more direct, and higher stakes where our people and their lives and livelihoods are concerned. Just recently, I visited one of our many resorts on St. Kitts, and that resort has lost its beach. And for that reason, it has downgraded its rating. That means, of course, less tourists, less revenue, less job, less economic impact, less economic growth. Another time I was passing along the coast, and we have an area that we call the Fort Thomas Hotel, which is an area that is deemed to be one of the most historical areas because it represents possibly a grave site of the original people of the land who would have been there for a couple thousand years. And as you look at it from the seaside, it is undermining and it's falling over. We are losing that historical site because of sea level rise. Hence, this is not an impending disaster. This is already an emergency for St. Kitts and Nevis. So sea level rise represents more than just a one-dimensional environmental issue. And so when we speak about protecting rights, we are also highlighting the extent of the threats being posed, threats that hinder the right to life and safety, the right to housing and land, the right to food, water, and basic needs, the right to stay, the right to live, the right to culture, identity, and heritage. A top priority, therefore, for this government, my government, has been ensuring that we embed resilience through policy and partnership so that our coastal communities and shorelines are protected and can support our people's needs, wants, and rights. It is this understanding that has largely guided our environmental policy. And in 2024, at the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States, the Federation and the Global Center for Climate Mobility laid the groundwork to what would grow to become one of our most reliable, dependable, and fruitful partnerships. Our work symbolizes collaborative climate action that transcends geography making it clear that coastal countries across the Caribbean, Africa, the Pacific, and Asia, and even those connected to the European Union. And I say the European Union and not Europe specifically, because the closest territory to St. Kitts and Nevis is a territory under the banner of the European Union. And they too share the difficulties and challenges that we are dealing with. So this is really a global issue that affects all of us. Therefore, multilateralism, of which I am a major proponent of, as well as global partnership, are our main sources of recourse and guarantors of survival. Thanks to the work of Global Center for Climate Mobility, especially through initiatives such as the Communities Climate Adaptation Facility, and recently their Global Principles for Climate Mobility, small island developing and large ocean states are able to have not just the much needed financing, but the policy framework to serve, protect, and uphold the rights of our people. For our Federation, this is especially critical as we work to manifest our sustainable island state agenda. And our government's large-scale ambition for transformative sustainability, a vision that is premised on safeguarding and protecting our citizens through responsive development and incisive innovation. In other words, the overarching vision of the St. Kitts and Nevis is to ensure that we develop a sustainable island state, premised on the fact that the climate threat and all that it entails is our biggest threat at this particular time. It is therefore gratifying to be able to pursue this charge backed by the GCCM's complementary partnership. When we speak about the right to stay, it is us doing the work to revitalize our coastlines with an aim of protecting not just our natural resources, but the livelihoods that depend on them for their daily survival. When we speak about financing, it is us utilizing the CCAF to fund community-led adaptation and empower the leadership of coastal communities in their solution building. When we speak about a whole-of-society approach, it is us doing the necessary work, the outreach and engagement that ensures that our responses to climate change incorporate all the voices and experiences that harmonize to create Kittitian and Nevisian culture. I therefore say that the videos of St. Kitts and Nevis that you have seen today, these videos symbolize the very epitome of what it means to collaborate to bring solution to local communities, whether it is fishing, farming, livelihoods that our people have been depending on for centuries. This, of course, is our destiny, and this, of course, is our optimism. So I say to all of us who are friends today, if we came as strangers, if we have come as acquaintances, I am sure that we would leave as friends united at least by this common purpose, the common purpose to work together to deal with the solution of what we are dealing with, especially the climate emergency and sea level rise. So I continue to say that I'm very optimistic, and I know that our solution does not lie with us working alone, but always working together as one humanity to resolve this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister Drew, and I think we can return the compliment. I think working with leaders like you keeps us hopeful and keeps us going and working hard to push the envelope and push what is possible. So thank you for your partnership and your whole team. We've really enjoyed working with St. Kitts and Nevis. I would like to introduce our second keynote speaker, His Excellency Us Hussein Mohammed Latif, Vice President of the Republic of the Maldives. Sir, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Excellencies, for the Maldives, sea level rise is not a future concern. It is the reality that is already shaping our development planning, infrastructure investments, and long-term national priorities. As a low-lying small island developing state, we are highly aware that sea level rise presents profound questions. Questions about the future of our communities, territories, livelihoods, and the rights of our people. It challenges not only physical security, but also the ability of our people to maintain our homes, cultures, identities, and connections to places. Yet, even with these challenges, one principle remains clearly. The challenges we face do not reduce our rights as a state. Nor does climate change alter the fundamental rights of states and people under international law. Nor do the impacts of climate change and sea level rise diminish the rights and the flow from them. The Maldives, along with other states, has consistently affirmed that statehood and sovereignty must be upheld and protected. The rights must continue to be preserved despite such challenges. International law is grounded in stability, equity, fairness, and the sovereign equality of states. The rights of our people, including the right to self-determination, must remain protected. For the Maldives, protecting rights in the face of sea level rise begins with strengthening resilience. Our first priority must be to protect and support communities to remain where they choose to live with dignity. This calls for sustained investment in adaptation. Climate-resilient infrastructure, shore protection measures, safer housing, resilient public services, and long-term planning. Adaptation is not simply an environmental response, it is a means of safeguarding rights, livelihoods, culture, identity, and human dignity. For decades, the Maldives have invested in climate-resilient island development and climate-informed urban planning. Through initiatives such as Hulumal and now Rasmale, we are seeking to expand opportunities for our people while reducing climate risks. These investments reveal that proactive adaptation can help protect communities before displacement becomes unavoidable. However, while international action is essential, it cannot substitute for international cooperation. It calls for continued efforts to advance legal certainty, support vulnerable populations, enhance adaptation, and ensure that affected states retain the capacity to protect their people and exercise their rights. It also demands significantly scaled-up support. Many vulnerable countries face adaptation costs that they cannot afford. Without predictable and accessible finance, the capacity of countries to protect communities and build resilience will remain limited. Ultimately, this discussion is about protecting people and states from a crisis they did not create or cannot stop. Protecting rights in the face of sea level rise demands sustained and coordinated partnerships across all levels of governance. The Maldives remains committed to collaborating with partners throughout the international community. Together, we must advance solutions that protect people, safeguard rights, uphold international law, and strengthen resilience in the face of sea level rise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice President Latif, and we are very much looking forward to deepening our partnership with the Maldives. I have now the pleasure to introduce the moderator for today's panel, Mr. Gerhard Schlaudraff, Head of Division in the German Federal Foreign Office. And I take this opportunity to also thank Germany for being a partner in the CSAT coalition, in the forum here, and multiple efforts that we have undertaken over the years. And we look forward to continued collaboration and to this panel. So thank you.
Perhaps I start from here, and it's my pleasure to be the moderator of this high-level panel and introduce our panelists. So, His Excellency Saidu Isufu is Ghana's Minister of State for Climate Change and Sustainability. He also recently was appointed to the CFE V20 board. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Her Excellency Tanya Serafimi von Romualdo is a permanent representative of Cabo Verde to the United Nations. She has been centrally involved in the sea level rise agenda and was appointed by the Secretary General as co-facilitator of the UN Declaration on sea level rise. And on a personal note, I have to say, your goalkeeper Vozinha has been an inspiration for my children. They have followed that match with such zeal. It's congratulations. The Honorable Tokumbo Philip Wahab is Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources of Lagos State. You are also a highly accomplished practitioner and alumnus of Harvard Kennedy School and Harvard Business School, I understand. And Lagos is one of the most exposed megacities to sea level rise. Finally, the Honorable Luca Salvetti is the mayor of Livorno since 2019, was re-elected in 2024, and Livorno is a port city on the Ligurian coast, a major port city. So we're looking forward to the discussion. So I will ask a question to each panelist, and then we go into an open Q&A, and we finish off with a round of last statements. Your Excellency, Ghana has played a significant role in the V20. It's a coalition that now represents nearly 70 countries, over 1 billion people. It's a reminder that vulnerability to sea level rise extends far beyond small islands to major coastal nations and economies. How can platforms like the V20 reframe sea level rise as a challenge to global economic and financial stability, and use that argument to draw in countries and institutions that may not yet see themselves on the front line?
Thank you very much, Excellencies. It is important to state that Ghana has played a leading role within the sub-region. Currently, the CVF Secretariat is being hosted by Ghana, and that goes to suggest the level of acceptance and the level of readiness that the country has engaged in building resilience. So it is important to underscore this. Now, we know that sea level rise is just not a small island issue. As we started this morning, we have gone through, and almost everybody, all speakers alluded to the fact that most people feel that it's a small island issue. But I think that it is a systematic economic and financial risk that threatens coastal nations like Ghana and the vulnerable 20 group of ministers of finance. Now, I'm saying this because Ghana is not a small island, but we have coastal communities. About 40% of our population live within the coastal belt in Ghana, springing from Tema, Accra, Takoradi, Sekondi. All those communities are coastal communities. And about 40% of Ghana's population live along that. So we are saying that if Ghana is not one of the small islands that we are talking about, and sea level rise, according to the World Bank, 0.05%, 0.05% of sea rise is most likely going to cause a havoc for the economy of Ghana. The coastal assets, about $3.8 billion is going to be at risk with the smallest rise of 0.5 meters. So the implication is that supply chain is going to be disrupted economically, and if supply chain is disrupted, last year alone, Ghana exported almost $4 billion to the EU communities, EU countries, whilst we imported about $3 billion. So the implication is that if this is not checked, or if we say that sea level rise is a small island issue, and Ghana suffers this calamity, the disruption is not going to be limited to our country alone. It is going to escalate to the EU, and all economies are going to be affected worldwide. So we're saying that the CVF and V20 countries, now about 70 or 74 different countries, should show interest in this, because it is not a small island issue. It is an issue that affects the globe. It is an issue that leads to supply chain disruptions. And once supply chain is disrupted, the whole global economy is disrupted. So we are saying that V20 countries should fall in line, and we all work together and reframe. We reframe the problem that it is not a small island issue, it is a global issue that requires everybody's attention. And that is what we are doing today. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are saying that besides that the coalition and data that we have, if 74 different countries, we are talking about 36% of UN members. So we have the numbers and we have the data. So if we have the numbers and we have the data, then why can't we succeed? We need to rally together, because at the end of the day, more than 36% of the UN member countries will have their economies disrupted as a result of sea level rise. So we're saying that we will have to come on board and look at that. The kind of investment narrative that we spoke about this morning is something that we have to look at. So I think that it is a global issue that requires our absolute attention. We have to be deliberate about it. We have to work together, and we have to know that it is not a small island issue. We have to reframe it and know that it affects all economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Your Excellency, Ambassador, I think that takes us to a question I would have also liked to ask, and perhaps we have time to chat afterwards. We have a big opportunity in September at UNGA with the Declaration on Sea Level Rise to do what the Minister is saying, show to the world that this is an issue that is larger, that affects all coastal communities and throughout the world. I had an epiphany, I have to say, in a meeting that we had in last year's Climate Mobility Summit with the GCCM, where we had a breakfast on sea level rise, and we had ministers and mayors and heads of states from Malta to New Zealand to St. Kitts and Nevis, from everywhere, and everybody spoke the same language. I found that very coming from the climate negotiations, I found that very interesting. So you are negotiating and facilitating the negotiations for the sea level rise declaration, and there are very specific legal questions that are very important on maritime boundaries and the continuity of statehood and so on. How do we make sure that the sea level rise declaration doesn't become too specifically around just these questions, but speak to the larger public, basically to every coastal nation in the world? Where do the negotiations stand? Where do you see the big issues?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Allow me to start by agreeing totally with what the minister just said. Indeed, this is not a small island states issue. It's an issue that affects about 1 billion people around the globe. For this very reason, the vulnerable communities around the world are now asking, how do we protect our people, our identity, and our rights in the face of the sea level rise? Our President of the Republic, José Maria Neves, during the 78th UNGA, that was in 2024, launched a call for a global pact on climate mobility. And here we are today. On the sea level rise declaration that is to be adopted at the next high-level meeting, which will happen in September in New York, as co-facilitator together with Australia, Cabo Verde remains very firmly committed to building an ambitious and forward-looking declaration that responds to these defining challenges of our time. What we register is that there is an emerging global consensus. 2 years ago at the high-level meeting, there was no consensus on the fact that sea level rise should be an issue considered at the UN, maybe even become a specific agenda item. So at this moment, we do have global emerging consensus. It is clear the physical effects of climate change must not erase the rights, the dignity, the sovereignty, or identity of the affected people. The communities have the right to remain safely on their ancestral lands whenever possible. And this requires, of course, greater investment in adaptation, building resilience, and locally led solutions. There was a lot of talking about the locally led solutions on one of the panels this morning. So even with those locally led solutions, there will be times when mobility is unavoidable. So when this happens, it should happen through safe, orderly, and participatory, rights-based approaches that preserve culture, identity, and human rights. What we witnessed during the discussions, we had so far several rounds. Last week, we discussed Ref 1 of the draft. Next week, the 23rd and the 24th, we will have 4 more rounds of consultations on Ref 2, and hopefully it goes in the direction that we want it to go, with a very global and inclusive approach. One of the issues that we believe has to be in the declaration was approached by the advisory opinions of the International Court of Justice and the International Tribunal for the Law. This opened a critical window, and the international community has affirmed the continuity of statehood and preservation of maritime zones. Now we must go further, take some steps more, and translate this legal consensus into concrete diplomatic, financial, and technical cooperation. We have a second round of questions, or I need to
yes.
deal with
no.
time. Okay.
So I was just informed that we'll have a short possibility for you to wrap up at the end, but we will not really be able to go into
so let me check
Q&A
if there's
because
anything really important that we should also mention.
you will have
here.
you will
And
have a
of course
last word.
I'm looking at my notes. Notes usually make us go faster. I would like to underline the importance of the partnerships that are being built right now. The Coalition for Addressing Sea Level Rise and its existential threats, the so-called CSAT, is of vital importance, and Cabo Verde is very proud to be among the champion members, working with others to transform commitment into action, because this is what we need now, action. Action means ensuring that climate finance reaches the communities who are most exposed to the impact, and who usually are also the ones who face more barriers in accessing the resources. So we must simplify the access, scale up the locally led adaptation, and ensure that those on the front lines, and we saw so many videos here today, so those communities on the front lines are the ones who need to have access to financing, to work on their adaptation, to be empowered, and to be able to shape their own solutions, fit for themselves. I think I should maybe, there was one thing that I should
give a chance to the others also
forget.
to say something.
Just one thing? Okay, so I just wanted to mention the Communities Climate Adaptation Facility as a model of what rapid and locally led financing can look like. And we call on the international community for a 1% community allocation for climate finance. I know this is not an easy
but that's Cabo Verde.
Goal to achieve, yes. But I mean, Cabo Verde, but we believe that more of us, and as Prime Minister Drew mentioned a while ago, we should walk out of here with something on our tables and with commitments and with new friendships on common goals. So why not have this as a common goal? 1% is only the floor. It's not a ceiling.
I'm looking forward to continuing that discussion later. I've been doing climate finance and my team negotiated the NCQG for Germany, so we can, and I was in Bonn last week, I spoke with the LDC chair and AOSIS chair, but now we move on to the subnational level. So Lagos State, Tokumbo Philewap, is one of the most exposed areas, mega areas, most exposed to sea level rise, millions at risk. How do you integrate sea level rise into your planning and governance? What coalitions are you looking to build, and what would you expect from a sea level rise declaration?
Thank you very much. Let me start by painting a picture of Lagos. Lagos is a subnational in a country called Nigeria. Lagos used to be the old capital, but today is a commercial nerve center. Lagos is just a dot in Nigeria because the size of Lagos is 0.4% of the landmass of the country called Nigeria. That is with just 3,557 square kilometers of land. A third of this is water. Now, on the southern border of Lagos, we have the Atlantic, where we share 186 kilometers of our stretch with the Atlantic. Lagos also houses 10% of the country's population. Just close your eyes and imagine that for a starter. But as a state, we know the challenges. We've lived with it. We know climate change is real, and we have to address it frontally. What we've done in the past few years is to draw up policies that we can integrate into our daily living. And that was why the governor himself at COP28 in Dubai unveiled the Lagos State Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan. This shows that this is a roadmap we're going. This also enables us to have resilience integrated fully into all our policies, be it housing, be it health, be it environment, and then we start ticking the boxes. Also as a state, we've also ensured we will not just throw our hands up and surrender to these challenges. We know for a fact inaction will cost us between $22 to $29 billion if we fail to do anything. We also know for a fact it will displace between 1 million and 1.5 million of our citizens if we fail to do anything. So daily, we are exposed to the vagaries of coastal erosion, flash flooding. I got here this morning, I'm leaving again tonight because it's raining heavily in Lagos and I can't leave home. So what have we done differently? We've been very proactive beyond policies. We set up what today is known as the Great Wall of Lagos. For those who are familiar with Lagos, or you can do a Google search. There used to be a place called Victoria Island, and they used to have the Barbish. Growing up, Barbish was where we go to as a beachfront. But for years, the ocean surge was taking it out. And that was where you had the most elitist part of this country, in Lagos. It was very bad. It was just a matter of when it would consume the whole of the island. But today, by way of vision, by the incumbent president of the country when he was a governor, set up the Great Wall, set up what had become the biggest real estate infrastructure known as Eco Atlantic. Now, that wall protects the whole of Lagos Island by the coast. And this was done by the Dutch technology. Beyond that also, we've chosen to say we have to start pushing back to restore the mangroves and the wetlands, because those are nature's natural sponges for a coastal state like Lagos. Providing the resilient infrastructure is okay, but how do we now scale it up? That's why we're here. We need collaborations. We need us to agree to invest and scale up investments in climate funding to coastal cities on the global south. That is the reality we are all shying away from. We can't do it alone. The impact or what we throw into it negatively is minimal, but we feel it the most in the global south. And I'm glad we're having this honest, frank conversation here today. Secondly, we also believe it's time for us to scale up the technologies involved. Without the technology in modern day, we are just going to be wasting our time. What we are facing is daunting, and there's a need for knowledge exchange. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And again, I'm abusing of my privilege to say perhaps we can continue that debate. I think it's very, we need this debate in the MDBs, because we're talking about large infrastructure projects. And we are talking about a lot of money that can be saved if you invest today. So there's even a business case. You may know Avinash Persaud from Barbados. They also built a seawall. And there was partly private finance in there, because companies understand that if you help create resilience, you can limit the damage to private assets. So we have an onslaught on climate finance in the MDBs, and all the shareholders need to be held to the idea that we need the MDBs to work on these issues. I could talk longer, but perhaps we can continue later. I will move on to Luca as the mayor of Livorno. We have already heard about cities in Africa and coasts around the world, but it's the same challenges for European cities. We have all heard about Venice, the Netherlands, the German coast. How are you planning for long-term impacts of sea level rise? What is at stake for your city, and what benefit do you see in having a political mobilization like we are trying here?
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon from Italy, from Tuscany, and from Livorno, that is the part of Tuscany. In Livorno was born Amedeo Modigliani, and there is an extraordinary fish soup that name Caciucco. You can eat it very well. Thank you for this invitation, for the forum, for the opportunity to share the vision of a Mediterranean coastal city such as Livorno. I want to speak about two things. The first is Biennale del Mare, is an event in Livorno, and the second is Livorno Welcoming City. For the first, sea level rise is not an abstract or distant problem for us. It's already a present reality. In 2025, during Livorno's first Biennale del Mare, we placed this topic at the center of our discussions, highlighting how our coasts are also exposed to erosion and rising sea levels with concrete implications for territorial safety and the quality of life of our communities. All of this leads us to consider climate change not only an environmental challenge, but as a deeply social and political issue. Coastal cities are among the first to experience the effect of these changes, but also among the first that must equip themselves in terms of governance, urban planning, and the protection of rights. The second thing, Livorno is also a welcoming city. Our history and identity are linked to the sea and to the mobility of people. Today, we see how migration flows are influenced by climatic factors, especially in the most vulnerable countries. The people arriving with not only stories of poverty or conflict, but also for consequence of extreme climate events and the loss of land caused by rising sea levels. From 2022, we have welcomed 25 ONG ships with over 3,000 migrants in Livorno. And we have done with heart and mind. Heart and mind. And with the slogan, no one is foreigner here. And so, for this reason, we believe that it's essential that the response of these challenges be multi-level and grounded in solidarity. Protecting rights today also means anticipating and governing these phenomena. Rather than simple enduring them, it means investing in urban resilience, but also building a narrative and a practice of hospitality that live up to European and international value. Livorno is ready to play its part by sharing experience and cooperating with cities and the institutions. Thank you for this moment. Thank you for the forum.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and I'm being pressed to wrap up, but I would like all of you, and we start with you, Luca, and we go back, ask you one point specifically what you think we should concretely decide to do together with the GCCM. What be the agenda item that you think we should work on now? For example, as a German government, we cooperate with the Bosch Foundation and the GCCM. What would you recommend us one item to pick up and move forward?
We had to work to climate adaptation, the protection of rights, and the fair management of human mobility. This is the fundamental for our life, but to stay in, between the other person in Livorno, but all over the world.
Thank you.
For me, I strongly believe, and I have spoken about this extensively, the West must show more than rhetorics, but strong commitment to climate funding for not just coastal cities in the global south, to address the real life issues around climate change and global warming. Financing and the flow of financing matters a lot. Thank you very much.
I would say we should use the political declaration on sea level rise as a test and to prove our collective capacity to anticipate risk, prevent crisis, and prove that multilateralism, even in those very difficult times, can still bring results for people. Implementing the declaration means that planned relocation must be participatory, transparent, and anchored in the consent of the affected communities and never imposed. We would we think that people, when they are forced to move, they should be able to do so with their rights, their culture, and their identity, because that's what identifies them as people and as nations. So let us all work to move from principles to implementation, from vulnerability to resilience, and from promises to concrete action without leaving anyone behind.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have already said that in Ghana, 4 regions out of 16 lie within the coastal belt. So, and the whole morning we've come to understand, even before that, look, nobody wants to move. Everybody will want to stay in their communities. They are connected to their cultural practices. They are connected to their local economy, their sources of production. They are connected to that, so nobody wants to move. That has been underscored. But for me, I think that we shouldn't just talk about adaptation, but we should talk about locally led adaptation, okay? For locally led adaptation, we can confidently say that that is going to be a sufficient condition for us to address this gap. Okay, so locally led adaptation is something that we have to look at, and we have to be deliberate about it. We have to be deliberate about it and confront it, and that is the way to ensure that we keep the affected communities at where they belong to. However, in the event that we're not able to do that, we're saying that movement must be planned, okay? The rights of people must be protected. And that's exactly what we are saying. And in protecting the rights, we're looking at we have to have legal clarity and continuity. It's something that we have to look at. We also have to look at localizing climate finance, ensuring that we target communities that are worst affected. Contributions and support should be targeted. And above all, we are saying that there has to be dignity. If we deploy dignity in mobility, if we deploy all these, then we are going to ensure that if people are moving, they are moving with some amount of dignity, and the communities that are going to be left behind will also be salvaged, where they are arriving or where their new locations will also be managed. All these things are things that we have to look at, because in the long run, we should be mindful that such movement is going to induce some climate mobility security concerns at where they are going to. And these are things that we have to look at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure these were more than 4 concrete points that you put in our luggage. I want to comment on one thing, the question of the climate finance and the West. I'm not sure that the West ever existed, but certainly doesn't exist today in the way we conceived it even a few years ago. We have the largest historical emitter who pretends that climate change doesn't exist. So as Europeans, we feel a little bit that the debate on climate finance, when it is politicized, is barking up the wrong tree. The EU and its member states do 2/3 of climate finance that is around. Germany has contributed 11.4 billion in 2024. That's roughly 10% of all the climate finance. But apart from that, the high-level expert group report, also the report of the Secretary General on the sea level rise, has been very clear about the enormous financial needs. It's not something that can ever be paid for from public funding. So we have to be much more innovative, and we need to have new coalitions on making this happen. I spoke about the MDBs, and this is really my conviction, that we need to think about climate finance away from the numbers and also from the impact. Locally led, usually much cheaper, for example. Yeah? So how can we get more impact with the money that we have? That is very crucial, I think. Thank you.